Hi there, everybody. My name is Kate, and welcome to my channel, Firehorse Academy 88. Thank you for joining me. This is a timeless message in that truth is always the truth, no matter what time of year it is, no matter what the astrological events are, etc. However, right now we are under some pressing energies that they're not going to stop. They haven't stopped for quite some time. However, humanity is being pushed, encouraged, stretched, yanked, banked, whatever you want to call it. Humanity is being shoved through the tiniest little keyholes to understand itself as a kinder, more humane structure. The old stabilizing structures of the past are coming down. The powers that were are losing their powers, and those that are taking their place are the new earth leadership qualities, those institutions and those people, those structures, those paradigms that bring forth humankind in a different way. One of the biggest things that we can really come to understand about ourselves as individuals is how we are operating within a community, because we're moving into, with some eclipse energy, the full moon in Aquarius, etc., all of it that's coming up relevant to the time, right now. However, truth, as I said, is timeless. The astrological events are pointing us towards a north node in Aquarius, which is more of a community-driven society, which ultimately that is what New Earth is. Those are the downloads that star seeds and light workers have been getting for a very long time. It's the message that Jesus brought, Buddha, any of your traditions that you want to look at in the Gnostic studies, they all talk about coming together to understand our own ego, our own struggle of dark and light and the dark night, etc., overcoming all of that so that we can be of service without being codependent and without being a martyr. Jesus was considered a martyr by many. However, I've since come to understand that really Jesus was part of his own plan, and I believe that he understood that. However, it was painful, it was awful, and the betrayal was quite rude and difficult, and it did not have to be that brutal. That was the choice of humankind. That was the choice of the lowest common denominator in his group, was to betray him at that root level. And I will go forever probably with believing that it doesn't have to be that kind of brutality. I do not believe in timelines where things have to be dictated. I certainly am not yielding to anything that tells me I'm held and bound by a contract that I no longer have the ability to break because of karmic garbage. Those are all things that if we look into the Gnostic studies and we look at more of the spiritual science and overcoming the idea that there is a contract over our head, if we go with what Jesus actually said, the sovereignty of the soul is to choose its own path and to choose its own guidance and to choose its own freedom and its own emotional intelligence and energy management to the best of our ability. And if we're always seeking within us, the light within us, we all have that divine blueprint. And it's a matter of seeking that within us that will answer all of the questions outside of us about how we can obtain and attain that level of mastery of us. Now, we are not all seeking that. We don't all want that. We don't all think we want that. I mean, we're all at different points in our understanding and our willingness. And many people are not willing to let go of their earth experience. They want to be very earthbound. They like it. They feel very comfortable there. They like the money, they like the carnal ways, etc. And the best that I've found is to stay out of the judgment department as much as possible and get more into the discernment of, look, that's just not my bag, and get away from the drag of having to really assess any further than that. That is where ego battles happen. That is where unnecessary betrayals are made and had, because we stay in relationships trying to find the good, find the bad, identify, etc., and then change people's minds. And then it turns into a battle of the wills, of nothing more than an old paradigm that asks us to continue on. Please keep feeding this cycle that is endless, because those that like the struggle, that like the chaos, that like observing this from disembodied places, excuse me, and even human beings who just like to watch other people suffer and really like the chaos, that keeps that cycle going, and it feeds in an energetic way something that is going away. That system is old, it's broken, and it does not serve and has no place in the North Node of Aquarius. There is no place where a community-driven society is going to find a hierarchy with a shark at the top, with a predator at the top as the human being. Right now, we all, have found ourselves facing the predators of our lives in the places where we've been predators. And if we are not, thank you, there's a hawk right on the spot. If we are not, that is the journey within that is ours to undertake, and it's not anybody else's to make us do that. We cannot wake other people up, even if we try. We cannot shock them into submission. We cannot do any of that and rightfully make all of that work and get it through. Any attempt that we ever have to force another person to follow our plan, or to go with us, or to agree with us, or to give us validation, we must have closure. Any place where we're pushing, we are likely to get pushback, or we're likely to get submission, and either one of those is an imbalance immediately. That if I push someone and I get what I want out of it, then I have just demonstrated my ability to manipulate. And for me personally, I haven't found that to be successful with doing it nor receiving it. I don't like being pushed, and I don't like feeling like that pushing is necessary. And the moment that I feel myself being squeezed or wanting to go in that direction, then that's for me to immediately disengage and find out what is it in me that is being hooked by this behavior. What is it in me that is playing predator in this game? Because that's not my name. I do not care to be there, feeding a system where the powers that were, the structures that were, those are crumbling. And anywhere that there's a last ditch attempt to grab a hold and, please make sure you save this, salvage this, then I am helping a dying system to continue its crawl. And I'd rather just see the weeds, die away on their own, stop feeding them, and let them dry up and die up on their own without me having to do anything at all. I don't need to put any weed killer on it. There's no such thing. For speaking truth is what it is, and it can be its own weed killer if we feel the need to even speak the truth out loud to another person. I find that just living in the truth of who I am and what I am without necessarily informing anyone, is the best place for me to stand, because people generally don't want to hear, whenever I've tried to go back and say, well, this is this and this is that, it hasn't gone well. So I found that just standing up in who I am and disembarking from the ride the moment that I find out it is a ride, without any fanfare, without anything, leaves it quite unpredictable and leaves it in the hands of those that I've left behind to wonder, I wonder what it is, if they're going to. And most of the time, I don't find that I have anybody coming back to ask too many questions, and it's fine, because the lesson for me is to learn when is the best time for me to figure out that this is going to be a waste of my time, and make my endeavors mean more to me by ceasing to exist in places where I really need not be. And unfortunately, as light workers and empaths and starseeds, people that are really here on a mission to help humanity, we are often buffaloed into believing that we're here to help all of humanity, we're here to save it, and we are not. There's nothing about what I've ever gotten in downloads that said that it was my mission on this planet to try to retrieve every single soul on the planet. There's no way that makes sense. There's no way that is even a remotely good idea, because it takes away the notion right off the top that every single person has to choose their spiritual sovereignty, and they do not. That is what free will is all about. about. And the beauty of leaving it up to other people to decide is that we honor their journey and we honor them, and best we honor ourselves by saying, that is not my battle to fight. That is not mine to do anything with, other than to allow another person the space to, oh, I see you want to do your life very differently than me, then please do that. And the more that people are loud and proud about it, makes it easier for me. You know, the sidewinding buffalo bill types that like to really speak the magical blah, blah, blah. Those can be a little bit more difficult to discern sometimes. However, even that, I find that the less I get involved in what people are saying and just showing me, you know, I have had relationships with people up until just recently that, oh, that's weird. You know, I wasn't expecting that. However, I also don't give a lot into things. I give at the rate that's being given to me. And if I'm given, you know, very shallow, superficial connection, then that's what I offer. And you know, that is, I've found is not always met with the greatest of intentions from the other side, because people often, when they see the depth and the ability of someone who is a starseed or a light worker, they would like to have more of that. They would like to have, you know, their piece of what they think is their pie, that, well, you have this, you should share this. And it's really quite a harsh lesson. However, no, just because I have something does not mean that it's automatically shared with everybody. It's shared with those people who can honor and respect the time and the space that it takes for me to bring that to that place, and the same as I return to them. And really staying very hard and fast in those boundaries is, I've found that's the most helpful way to be. And it's clear. It makes things very clear for other people so that they can see. If they're going to, they will see. And if they're not going to, they'll usually show themselves pretty early. The sidewinding types, you know, that like to BS and are good at it, they might take us out of our element for a moment. However, not getting super attached is the key to that. That not getting super attached to what somebody promises me, not what somebody says they're going to do for me. I do for myself. And yes, it gets difficult. Yes, sometimes it's lonely, and I still would much rather be standing with the ability to know that I have my sovereignty. I take care of myself, and anything I can't do for myself, I don't do it, or I don't need it, I don't have it, or whatever. But all the provisions that I need for me to live my life and be sovereign and free, that is what I factor in as my priority. And if I have to rely on somebody else to provide something to me, then that is where I start losing my sovereignty. And I'm not on that. I'm much rather to be, you know, showing people how to live a life where it's okay to be a lone wolf, and it's okay to go your own way, and to find your tribe, and to truly hang out knowing that my vibe is my vibe. And if I have to lower my standard to be in a group, or to be accepted, or to feel like I have to shut myself down in order to not, you know, have any opposition from somewhere, then that's a harsh lesson to learn. That's more than likely, I haven't seen that ever do anything except burn. It's just a matter of how long it takes to get it there. And it's so painful when we get invested in those places and we find out that, wow, I've had to really numb myself down and dumb myself down, you know, not to mention it picks up stalkers, it picks up hangers on, sometimes it picks up people who go into really some crazy making spaces with what they're willing to do. And it has been an absolutely crazy experience in my own world to see just over the years how many freaky things happen when people do not get their way, and they're used to getting their way, especially if they've known us for a really long time. They will go deep into their dark bag. And especially, you know, for those people out there who've been targeted, for those people who have lived under very dark agendas and dark campaigns with dark witches and dark workers and really nasty stuff, that, you know, quite a number of the world is waking up to find out that it really does exist. You know, when you've lived under that, you live under some different rules of understanding that it's critical that we don't make alliances with people that we cannot trust, or that people that are shady, or people that somehow make us feel, you know, a little bit uncomfortable, or a lot uncomfortable, or whatever. That me personally, I have put my standard of excellence a little bit higher recently, with finding out that, wow, there's just some folks that they look like they're doing okay, and they're really just doing some dark, nasty stuff behind the scenes that, downloads are great. However, evidence out here in the 3D can really support those downloads. And, I've been shocked and dismayed. However, not so much so that it kept me from doing what I needed to do. It's just people will go to many ends, to try to end the other person rather than to end their agenda of darkness or their agenda of manipulation or whatever it is that they're feeding on. They'll go to some pretty extreme places, I've found, and I just don't like to see humanity making choices like that, around me. And so, as hoity-toity or persnickety or whatever as it would seem, it's okay, because the more that I see myself as someone who has a standard that I'm not supporting the old agenda, not willingly, and the moment that I see that I have evidence that it's coming at me, then it's my responsibility as a sovereign light worker to stand up in that, to not answer to anybody except what I'm committed to. And if the mission that I'm here to serve involves me being liked by everybody, then I think I've misunderstood myself, for the moment. And that's up to me regardless. It's not up to somebody else to identify themselves to me as a dark worker necessarily, or as a bad person. It's up to me to listen to my body, to allow my mind and my spirit, my soul, my heart, all of it to align properly with my team and with what I know to be true. And the more that I align with that, then I allow other people to align with what they do. And the more proper we come in those situations, it really it enforces the boundary for us, and it encourages people, pushes, however it does, others to come into alignment with what they're going to be on their assignment. If they're dark, it really asks them to show up with what you really are. And yes, it can engender some hostile responses and reactions, and it's okay. We can keep ourselves well protected, and we can keep ourselves well balanced by just knowing that this is the time. This is the end times, as it were. It's the end of the old paradigm, and people are bringing out their nastiest of the nastiest, points for extra creepy from people right now. I've had some interactions over the last few weeks that, like, wow, that was really soups creepy. However, no, it's like watching a movie. I don't watch creep shows and I don't watch horror movies. However, when a scene comes zinging through, I treat it pretty much the same way, and I don't try to understand what was that bugaboo, because me trying to understand the dark agenda, or why somebody's squealing or squawking or squirking or whatever they're jerking, whatever they're doing, that goes into the dark bag, trying for me to understand the pathology of that and to understand the spiritual mechanics of it. There's really no need for me to interview it, to understand it, or to write a thesis on it. It's only to identify that as, wow, that was super creepy, and wow, okay, and delete, block, whatever, and keep it moving, and to consistently keep detaching from it. Buddha, 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 just do not attach to anything, and to detach from things looking a certain way. I haven't found that attaching a whole lot of hopes, wishes, and dreams to stuff right now is a good idea either. So manifestation for me looks like, how am I serving humanity? What am I doing to best meet the needs of me, to be standing in the best place to serve Earth and the new Earth agenda and humanity as we're moving into a new frequency? And that's not an easy task. There are many of us here to do that job, and if we really keep our nose to that and keep our nose on our own paper, we have plenty on our plate to do to keep ourselves doing what we need to do, to not worry about what others are doing, whether they're coming or not, and whether they get it or not, what's going to happen when. Those are big, tall orders to worry about our own, to be concerned with our own fear, our own anger, our own healing, our own bodies, our nutrition, our energy management. Those are all things that take, exquisite amounts of time from us to do our own divine, that there really isn't time to be had with wondering what Judas is doing or why he did it. We know already why Judas did what he did. He was a betrayer, he was greedy, and he was jealous. I mean, that we can get into all the Gnosticism and all the theory about, well, it was necessary for, or we could just say, yeah, Judas was a real dirtbag and he did Jesus wrong, and whoops, there goes Judas, and let it go. Part of our healing, one of the most vital steps is not needing to have closure with the other side. Closure with ourselves means that, closure with ourselves means that we can take it upon ourselves that I'll take full responsibility for me, and I will be closing this out for me. I'm not asking a contract to come to, grips with itself. I'm going to take control of this and say management of my energy and management of my sovereignty says that no, there's no more contract that I'm willing to answer to thee. I'm willing to answer to me, and I'm willing to answer to my sovereignty and nothing more. And by stating those words, by taking that kind of authority and taking bold steps, whatever they are, however small they are, however big they are, to really put down boundaries and establish for ourselves, this is where I start and where I stop, and where I'm no longer going to be enmeshing with other people. I'm no longer going to be codependently asking them to float me along or to forgive me or to be forgiven and all this other stuff. It really is an inside job. No matter how much we want to believe that it's about other people, this is an inside job, and we will never become a community-driven society by asking other people to get in line with what we're doing. That is the old paradigm. If that worked, it would still be working, and it doesn't. We are moving out of that because the community says we accept those within our community, and we work to have the benefit of everyone in our community benefiting. And in toxic relationships, codependent relationships, very violent, destructive relationships, there isn't any community that's serving one side or it's serving one agenda. It's serving a parasitic triangle where the top of it is a predator, and the only triangle that I want to serve is the one where the higher knowledge is at the top of it. So 2112. On that, I'm at my grocery store to get some good healthy food, and I hope that this finds you well. And remember that it's really coming from inside. You have everything you need. You don't need to have anyone else guide you. You certainly don't need anybody else to tell you about you. And yet there's nothing wrong if we find our tribe when we do. There's nothing wrong with having community support. That is what this is going to. However, never be afraid to reach inside and decide that this is the answer I have for me, and I'm standing on that business and I am free. Just by allowing ourselves to even consider that there is no prison, there is no contract, there's nowhere that we have to be or anything that we should be doing. Those are pretty bold ideas that most of us on the planet are really not willing to go into. And so if you are willing, then speak those words for yourself and speak them to yourself, at whatever level that you can hear that and receive that. Then speak that out loud until it becomes so proud that you stand in that without needing to announce it to anyone. And that is indeed 2222, the most sovereign place that you can ever be, and it's the strongest that you can ever be. So anyway, time for me to go shop. Take care of yourselves. I hope you're well, and I'll see you again next time. Mwah. Goodbye, friends.